Blessings, everyone. My name is Alexis Akuya, and welcome to Genie Botanica, an ancestral craft studio bridging the worlds of art and ecology to preserve Black Indigenous culture. Based in Florida, I offer creative experiences like natural dye and paint workshops, exhibitions, panel discussions, and I also create small batch herbal remedies, artisanal goods, and educational books all about plants and the natural worlds in relation to African and globally indigenous cultures. Today, I would like to talk about Ifa. Ifa is an African spiritual tradition from the motherland, and it originates in Yoruba culture. The Yoruba people are a lineage from West Africa, and I discovered within the past few years that I have Yoruba ancestry on my mom's side of the family. So when I learned this about my heritage, it encouraged me to explore my family history more deeply. And around the years of 2019 to 2021, I was in a phase of self-exploration and really growing into myself as a woman, especially in regards to my spirituality. I was raised Christian. I grew up in the Christian church, and I was a very devout Christian. And when I was 16, I decided to stop going to church. And I was very adamant about this. I noticed that whenever I would join my family to go to church every Sunday, I experienced this mental and emotional blockage, and I didn't understand what exactly was going on at first. I didn't have a deep comprehension of what was happening in my spirit and my psyche. But all I knew is that I had this strong intuitive pull to spend less time at church. So I told my family, I'm not going to church anymore. And this was met with some disagreements from different relatives, and there were difficult conversations that were had, but ultimately they did respect my decision and they didn't make me go to church with them. And I was really grateful for this because I needed that space to explore what was happening in my inner world, and I realized that I wanted to understand God for myself without automatically accepting someone else's definition of God. And this is connected to my work in this craft studio because when I was learning more about my family history and my ancestral traditions, that's around the same time when I began integrating more natural materials into my art practice. I discovered natural dye when I was volunteering at an urban farm when I lived in Baltimore for a year. And that's when I started farming, and it was really fun and beautiful. It was such a magical experience learning how to grow food for the first time and seeing how cotton is grown. And we were filtering seeds from the indigo plant, and we were applying marigold flowers to fabric to make beautiful yellows. And I also started making herbal medicine that year as well, and that was really fun and interesting. And I learned that in Yoruba tradition from West Africa, it is a custom to make medicines with plants. And you would be surprised to learn that a lot of pharmaceutical drugs that are sold within the Western medical industry are derived from plants. So all medicine in the world originates from nature, and I found lots of wisdom and grounding in the realization of the fact that literally everything we have comes from nature. And Ifa is a nature-based spiritual tradition. So it's rooted in the belief that we are natural beings, we are beings of earth. And it also encompasses an innate spiritual belief in the unseen world. And this is also present in Christianity. So as I've been doing this work of exploration and discovery and research, I've noticed that there are a lot of similarities between Ifa and Christianity and pretty much all Western religions. There is a belief in the unseen world, and that is the purpose of prayer. That's why we pray in Christianity, in Islam, in Buddhism, in Hinduism. There's mantras that are spoken, and mantras are very similar to the essence of prayer, speaking to not only our higher selves, but also higher divinities and spiritual forces that we believe in, that play a role in our lives, that protect us, that nurture us, and all of those good things. So around that time, from 2019 to 2021, that was a very pivotal moment in the history of the world, literally. There was the pandemic that happened in 2020, and there was a shutdown, there was lockdown, you couldn't leave your home, it was craziness, people were rushing to the store, and there was also an emphasis that was placed on self-sufficiency. Around that time, a lot of people woke up to the importance of learning how to live a more sustainable lifestyle, learning how to have more sovereignty and control over our resources, and allowing resources to be more accessible to our communities. And so there was a lot of mutual aid that was happening around that time. There was a lot of open sharing of books and articles and archives. And there was also an emphasis that was placed on investing in the digital world, because it was difficult for people to connect with each other in that environment of being under lockdown, when there was a lot of confusion, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. So it really kickstarted this new era of the digital age. And I think it's really important that as we're existing in this digital space, we continue to invest in our lives in the flesh, in this physical realm, to stay present and stay mindful, because there were many lessons that were learned on a collective scale around that time, and a lot of people experienced it as individual shifts within themselves. And this is what I experienced during that time. It was a moment of transformation. I was feeling very lost, especially in my academic life. I was going to school, and I thought I wanted to stay at that school, but when the pandemic started, I realized that I wanted to take a different path and explore myself in a more independent way. So I've been out of school since then. I've been doing entrepreneurship. I have been running a business. I've been creating art and exhibiting my art and connecting with my community. And I would like to be more open about sharing about African spirituality, because it's really important that, especially for those of us in the Black community who have been conditioned into thinking that African spirituality is witchcraft, that it's evil, that it's, some voodoo, hoodoo nonsense. What is that? It's spooky. It's really important that we make the effort to decolonize our perspective of religion that we've been conditioned into, and to recognize the fact that it's a very beautiful tradition. It's a tradition that is rooted in character development. It's a tradition that is rooted in communal systems of care. It's a tradition that is rooted in investing in ourselves, cultivating ourselves, connecting to our higher selves, and understanding our life purpose and the assignment that we've been given in this life, the reason why we're here. All of that wisdom can be gained from Ifa. So, about 2 to 3 years ago, I got my very first Ifa reading, and it was conducted at a local Ile, which is a Ifa spiritual house, similar to a church in Christian tradition. And it was very insightful. It gave me a lot of information about my life in general terms, things that I needed to be aware of about my own energy, my behavior, mannerisms, certain tendencies that I have, and things to look forward to in the future, especially when it comes to growing and rising into my womanhood. And I've gotten 2 more Ifa readings since then. And so what I've come to realize as I've been integrating myself into this tradition and reclaiming my ancestral heritage and spirituality is that it's recommended to receive Ifa readings at pivotal moments of your life. If you're going through something, if you're experiencing a difficult time, that's a really good moment to receive Ifa reading. If things are going well for you and you're moving through life very smoothly, maybe there are some things that you would like more clarity on, that's also a really good opportunity to get a reading in Ifa. And so there is this stigma of Ifa being evil. And what I have to say about that is, regardless of what spiritual tradition or religion you practice, there's always going to be someone in that tradition who misuses it and abuses it. Unfortunately, that exists in Ifa, that exists also in Christianity, and that exists everywhere around the world. There are people who use their power for selfish gain, who are motivated by their egos, and they just don't have well intentions. It's important to not allow those people to characterize your perspective of the tradition as a whole. And that's why you really have to be grounded in your own intuition and do your own research and be aware of how the things you're learning about the tradition resonate with you on a personal level. Because when you're fully embodied in that, then you'll be able to see those people who are not using the tradition well without allowing it to discourage you from exploring it or practicing it. And the way that Ifa is able to exist is through psychic divination. That's what Ifa reading is. It's a form of divination. You go to someone with a question or a concern, and they offer you guidance through the process of using their psychic abilities to consult either your spirit guides or your ancestors. And having an awareness of your ancestors is essential to Ifa, because our ancestors support us in our life journey, and they are the reason why we exist. Everyone is born into life with a specific karmic path, and that determines your destiny. And your karmic path and your destiny is a result of the karmic paths and the destinies of your ancestors who came before you. So when you get an Ifa reading, these are the people who are consulted to help you along your life journey, to provide an answer to your question and to also offer solutions to any issues or problems that you may be experiencing. And psychic people exist everywhere. There are psychic people in the Christian church. I've met people in Christianity who have psychic abilities, who have this very mystical way of moving about the world and delivering messages from their intuition, messages that they receive. And they feel a responsibility to deliver that message from a heart-centered space, because they understand that delivering a message as a psychic, as an intuitive, as a mystic, as a seer, whatever you want to call it, there's many different names for it. It's a form of service. So there's a level of compassion and humility that is involved in that process. And people don't usually associate Christianity with being psychic or intuitive. And there's a demonization of African spirituality. But there's a saying that goes, as it is in Ifa, so it is in the Bible. As it is in the Bible, so it is in Ifa. And I would like you to think about that more deeply, because it really helps to decolonize and deconstruct everything that we've been told about religion. Being psychic it's been misrepresented in mainstream media. There's all these TV shows and movies of, people being psychic and giving readings, and they can see ghosts and all these different things. And a lot of those shows and movies actually, they disillusion people from what it actually means to have intuitive abilities. And some of them even scare people into thinking that it's witchcraft. A lot of people are afraid of ghosts, don't really believe in them. There's this question like, are ghosts real? What is that? What happens in the afterlife? That's something that is very well understood in Ifa. What goes on in the spiritual realm? So with all this wisdom, Ifa brings so much empowerment to your identity, to your sense of self, to your perception and understanding of yourself as a natural being. It's very uplifting and it's inspiring. And one way that you can connect to Ifa, if you have African ancestry, because this tradition is open to anyone who has African ancestry, is that you can learn Yoruba language. Yoruba is the primary language of Ifa, and over the past few years, I've had a lot of fun learning Yoruba language, different vocab words. I've learned a bit about grammar. I've learned Yoruba proverbs, and there's a book called Yoruba Proverbs that I started reading that I highly recommend. And I will link it in the description box down below, along with this one. This is called Ancestor Paths, and it's written by Aladokun, who is an Ifa priestess. And this book is amazing. It's very insightful. I remember spending afternoons just sitting in the sun on a warm, sunny day, reading this book, and it brings up a lot of interesting points about misconceptions about Ifa, misconceptions about what it means to have spiritual gifts. Because a lot of people who don't know that they have spiritual gifts have spiritual gifts. And I'm one of those people. That's something I learned about myself. And that's why I love Ifa so much, because it shows you things about yourself that you may have been confused about before. In this world, in this society, there's a disconnection that happens between our lived, embodied experience and the ideas and beliefs that we've been told about ourselves. So when you're coming of age, when you're rising into adulthood, for example, myself being in my early 20s during that time, it was connecting a lot of dots, and it was putting the puzzle pieces together. And I was having all of these wow and oh my gosh, aha moments of thinking about things that I had experienced throughout my life that I never fully comprehended what that was. And so when I was reading this book, she talks about a lot of those things. She talks about children who have certain behaviors that are actually signs to gifts that they have that, you know, the adults in their life don't understand, don't know what to do with, you know, don't know how to navigate. So I recommend this book for anyone, if you're a young adult, if you're an elder, if you are a parent, someone who has a child and you would like to understand your child more, if your child is considered a little weird, then this book is gonna tell you a lot about your child. And the last thing I would like to share is that I've been learning Yoruba language in connection to my art practice and my experimentation with natural pigments and natural dyes. So in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Ifa is nature-based, and it involves the practice of herbal medicine using plants in their whole natural form for healing. And Ifa does promote holistic healing in that way. It promotes healing on a mental level, an emotional level, a physical level, and a spiritual level. And it's been really fascinating to me to discover how working with plants for healing is connected to working with plants for artistic creation. They're very similar. A lot of plants that have medicinal properties can also be used as dyes to color fabric. Pink, red, blue, purple, yellow, any color you can think of, there's a plant that produces that color that can change the color of fabric. It also be used for painting. I'm a visual artist. I have a background in painting, so that's been my primary focus. And there are dyes that are traditionally used in Yoruba culture. And so as I've been integrating more into Ifa spiritual tradition, I'm also applying this knowledge and information to my art practice to understand how my ancestors created things. I have ancestors who made quilts. I have ancestors who were seamstresses. I have ancestors who were dyers who tended to the dye pots, these large pots of boiling color where they would dip fabric in, they would dip in yarn, cotton, and then they would weave this yarn and they would sew this fabric. And so all of this is in my blood, it's in my lineage, and it's in a lot of our lineages that we have ancestors who preserved artistic craft traditions that are, for the most part, being honored more often nowadays. There was a period of time when these craft traditions were not respected as forms of art in their own right, and they were mostly viewed as domestic activities. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I would like to share in this video. Those are the 2 books I recommend. You can find the link to them in the description box, and you can also find the link to my website, geniebotanica.co, where you'll find more information about the community work that I do and the things that I offer and my creative practice and all of those good things. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Peace.